Two powerful storms swept across the Philippines in September and October. The devastation and disease they caused have killed around 1,000 people. The scale of the disasters has raised serious questions about both the government's preparations for and their response to the storms.
Nobody came to rescue us. Not even one rescuer came.
I'm Wayne Hay, and on this edition of 101 East, we ask if the inaction of the Philippine government cost lives, or if these were natural disasters it was powerless to prevent. Howell Davis has more.
Let's start with my mother. Her name is Maria Flor Bonzo. Next, my wife's name is Desiree Bonifacio. My eldest daughter, Maria Flor Daliza Bonifacio.
It's a litany of the dead. Victims of September's floods in the Philippine capital, Manila.
Next, my youngest, 2 weeks old, Lucky Bonifacio.
Overnight, Miguel Asnela lost his wife, his mother, and 5 of his 6 children.
I wanted to join them, but if I did, then who would take care of their bodies? I laid them down next to each other as I just stared at them, and then I started talking to them. I was like a madman. I asked them, "Why did you do this to me? There was no warning before you did this. Nothing. There was really nothing."
Tropical storm Ketsana and typhoon Palma hit the country in rapid succession. Manila bore the brunt of Ketsana, known in the Philippines as Onday, with flooding not seen for decades. More than 300 people died. Senior figures in the key body charged with disaster relief, the National Disaster Coordinating Council, NDCC, say the devastation in the capital was unavoidable.
Areas that were not usually flooded were flooded. And so while the NDCC and its frontline agencies are prepared for the typhoon, there were too many people to be rescued at the same time. And so it's really overwhelming.
That's been the official position since the floods struck. Despite being a tropical storm, a step down from a typhoon, Onday dumped more than 400 millimeters of rain in 24 hours. Significantly more than Hurricane Katrina in the United States 4 years ago. So heavy was the rainfall that even at the highest levels, Onday is being called a freak event. The Philippines President Arroyo called the flooding in Manila a once-in-a-lifetime event. But many here in the capital are questioning whether more could have been done to minimize the damage and the loss of life. Quirino Pineda left his wife and grandchild to take their car to higher ground nearby. Trapped by the floods, he couldn't return home until the next day, after the water had subsided.
When we entered, we saw my wife sprawled near the door at the back of the house. Then we saw my grandchild too.
He saw no sign of any official help on the night of the flooding.
Nothing. Nobody came to rescue us. Not even one rescuer came. Here, people were waiting for help. They were on the rooftops, but nobody came. They said that they were not able to conduct rescue operations because the city hall was also flooded, so they had no vehicles to use.
The NDCC has admitted that it only had 12 boats available on the night in question for rescue operations. And despite warnings of heavy rain, it didn't evacuate a single person from Manila, not even from areas known to be prone to flooding.
Well, the government has the power to do that, but it's easier said than done. problem of resource, for one. No? It's easy to say move one community out of harm's way, but where are you going to move them out?
Part of the problem could be the NDCC itself. 19 different departments and agencies are members, from the police to the Red Cross to the Department of Trade and Industry. It convenes only when disasters are imminent. That, critics claim, means long-term planning to prevent disasters is neglected.
After the disaster, these people come back to whatever they were doing before. So there is no real planning if you're talking preparedness. What basically they're doing is disaster response. That's been the favorite word. But of course, response and being prepared are two different things.
A crucial bit of equipment, Doppler radar, could have warned forecasters how much rain Onday was about to drop on Manila. It would have given the national and local authorities more time to prepare. But Manila is not covered by a Doppler system, despite plans to install it 2 decades ago.
The Weather Bureau had been requesting the equipment for all those years. And every time, the Department of Budget and Management turned it down or set it aside because it's not a priority.
The Arroyo government, in power since 2001, says the storm came just too early.
Just happened before this system were in place. However, by the end of next year, we shall be able already to put up the required number of Doppler radars all over the country.
Some experts claim the more fundamental problem is one of poor governance. Felino Palafox has been an architect and urban planner for more than 30 years. Contradicting the government, he says the disaster in the capital was entirely foreseeable.
These floods have been predicted in the study that I was a team leader for the World Bank, the Metro Plan, 1975 to 1977. We had a flood map of September 1970 flooding. If you compare the flood map, what happened recently here in September, and the flood map of September 1970, it's practically the same.
That World Bank study was published in 1977 in the wake of large-scale floods in Manila in 1970 and 1972.
But officials admitted that rescue efforts were vastly inadequate.
It called for an end to building on floodplains near rivers, which are extremely vulnerable, and for large-scale drainage works that would help take water away from the city. It was ignored for more than 3 decades. Now, but only after this year's floods, the Arroyo government has asked Palafox to look at the 1977 plan again.
The plans were there, the engineering drawings were there, feasibility studies were there as long as 32, 35 years ago. But somewhere along the line, those plans were never implemented. And this was a predictable flood disaster area.
Such mismanagement has had terrible consequences. This village in the province of Rizal is next to the river Marikina. A newly built dike was meant to keep the river away from the villagers, but it crumbled in September's flooding, letting massive amounts of water pour in. A month later, the streets here were still deeply flooded. That's when 2-year-old Milo Bocchio escaped his father's vigilance for a moment. His body was found shortly afterwards. He'd drowned. The dike that would have kept him safe, his father says, was simply uncompleted.
It would have been effective if it was finished, but it wasn't. What they did, they reported that it was complete, but it wasn't. They just said that it was done. You know, here in the Philippines, that's the system. They just abandon projects.
It's a tragic example of how little importance is attached to disaster planning in the Philippines. The Arroyo government says it's doing what it can with limited funds. That's led many to question if the president needs to spend quite so much on her foreign trips, more than $13 million in 2007 alone. Money that will be sorely needed in the future. Experts say Onday and Pepeng, the Filipino name for Typhoon Palma, will be rapidly followed by more storms.
It's a serious mistake if the government people think that Onday and Pepeng are once-in-a-lifetime events. I've already gone on record and said that just looking at the science, looking at the modeling, looking at what seems to be happening, this is not going to be once in a lifetime events. You know, this could be once in 10 to 20 years. It could, and when that, you say that really means it can happen same year, you know, twice in a row, or another, you know, two years in a row, and then maybe it won't happen for a while.
A new administration is due after elections in May. It will need to prepare for disasters rather than simply react to them. If it doesn't, then more people, like Miguel, will find themselves suffering anguish that seems almost unbearable.
Sometimes I wish I could be knocked over by a car to end all my suffering. But there are a lot of people supporting me. They tell me what to do. But maybe one of these days, I don't know. Sometimes I dream that we are already together. That's what I'm waiting for. That my dream will come true.
The high death toll and the enormous damage caused by the storms have meant many people are demanding answers from the Philippine government. We'll stay with 101 East because after the break, we'll be talking to one of its key members, the Defence Minister, Gilberto Teodoro.